days are cooler, nights are warmer, and I put the blame on you. Time moves slow, but my heart beats faster. When these eyes are looking right at you, right at you. You give me something to believe in, just what I needed. You're the closest.
Let me welcome you formally to this space, and thank you for coming today. Y'all know him. You know him probably from television. You know, the face is unmistakable. He's beautiful. He's also been behind the cameras, you know, directing and producing, and you may not see his fingerprints there, but he's also a world-class author, and he's got the third in a trilogy of books that he has. It is The Laws of Annihilation is the third in the Martyr Maker series. Let me welcome the great Eriq La Salle. Hi.
Good morning. How are you? How you doing?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are you?
All good. All good. Good to be here.
Good to see you. You know, I think about actors in the wake of the strike, you know, those thespians who make their careers, and most of them, you know, are true artists. You know, most of y'all aren't making $100 million or $10 million a film. You know, you're hardworking folk. And I love this for you. Is this a pivot, the writing, or is this just part of the fullness and the wholeness of who Eriq La Salle is?
Definitely the latter. I think I always look at things as being sort of an extension. If you take the basic, which is this, I'm blessed to be a storyteller. So this is just another version of me being a storyteller as an actor, being a storyteller as an actor, being as a director, being a storyteller as a producer, now being a storyteller as an author. So it's an extension, and each one influences the other. I think, you know, my work as an actor definitely helps me as a director. My work as a director helps me as a writer. My work as a writer helps me as a director and a producer. So they're all interconnected, and you know, it makes for a much more interesting journey.
So walk us through. I write more from a journalistic perspective. Novels are difficult for me because it requires this depth of imagination. When you sat down to do Laws of Depravity, walk us through where you were, what sparked this. You know, we're being introduced to some priests, something's going on that's a little nefarious. Where were you? What was the inspiration for this?
Well, I'd actually tried my hand at a novel, and it turned out pretty disastrous. It wasn't, you know,
How so?
First, well, it didn't work. It was a better concept. And it was kind of, you know, a little bit of all over the place, but there was the core of it was this interesting love story between these two people that meet in the park each day as strangers, and then eventually their relationship evolves. So I salvaged that part of it, and then put it in Laws of Depravity. Laws of Depravity really, and I knew I wanted to do something else. I didn't know what it was. I read an article one day that described how all of Jesus's disciples were brutally murdered, and I didn't know that at the time. And it's not in the Bible, but biblical scholars write about it all the time. If you Google how did Jesus's disciples die, it'll pull up the whole list. And it wasn't just 12, it was like 20 something. So, you know, Jesus wrote about 20 something deep, and all of them beheaded, crucified
Stephen, was it Stephen that was stoned to death? Buried to his death?
Stoned to death. Yeah, they died horrible deaths. And so when I read that article, and it was true, I said, wow, it would be really interesting to come up with a modern day serial killer who kills priests and clergy the same way that the disciples of Jesus were killed. And so then you find out the reason they're being killed is because they were fallen clergy. They were pedophiles. They were charlatans. They were, abusers in various ways. So hypocrites. So that's really, so I, in a weird way, I started with the bad guy first, and then I found my protagonist. And my protagonist was sort of is loosely based on, because I use the influence of film for me, of course, is huge, television and film. So I get inspiration from movies. So I like the movie Seven is one of my favorite movies.
Oh yeah.
So having that salt and pepper team,
Yes.
so my guys, they only investigate high profile serial killings. And so I took those two, one's African-American, one is Irish Italian American. And then I added a white, a Jewish female FBI agent who comes in to investigate this case with them. And so they form this really cool bond, the three of them, and they're just the best at what they do, but they go up against the best.
This series, the Martyr Maker series, Eriq La Salle, writer, and I love this. And you know, a lot of people sit down to do things, but you actually went to school, you know, Juilliard, NYU, Tisch, like you have this fine arts degree, you know, advanced degree. So you're not just playing around, you know, you respect the craft. And I love that. This book takes us into something that I'm familiar with. There was a killing of a little boy named Gavin Cato in Crown Heights. It was a caravan of Hasidim who had come through, I think it was Eastern Parkway, and they ran a red light and he ended up being killed. It set off a riot that lasted a few days. David Dinkins was mayor. I was at the New York Daily News at the time, and it actually launched my radio career because I went on the radio with a rabbi to have this discussion around Jews and Blacks. And the current crisis that we're in, it's kind of poignant that laws of annihilation kind of take us to New York City, summertime, Hasidim and Black. Were you in New York? You're from Connecticut.
Yes,
you
no.
remember
I
this, Crown Heights?
was here. I came. I was here in the '80s. I came here in '80, and I was here for 14 years. So this is where I, you know, trained. This is where I got my education. This is where I started my career. So I was here for a lot of that, a lot of the stuff. You know, Tawana Brawley, and I mean, I was, yeah. You know, the '80s had a lot of. You know, a lot of stuff.
Hawkins, Michael Stewart.
Yeah. So I wanted to explore the relationship, the tenuous and interesting relationship between the Jewish community and the African American community, and you take two out of three. The first one being Native Americans as being sort of the most oppressed and challenged. You know, there's a history of racism, obviously, towards African Americans. There's a history of anti-Semitism and hatred towards Jewish people. And again, Native Americans are the worst, or have had it the worst, I should say. And we kind of leave them out a lot of times when we have these discussions, but we can't forget that they were the originals. But I wanted to explore that interesting relationship of two people that in some ways, or two groups of people in some ways, that are sort of the most hated on certain levels, and the most feared, and the most discriminated against, et cetera, and in varying degrees. And so I wanted, and then how there's still a tension between those two groups. And so I wanted to explore that. And one of the B storylines, which is really cool, is that you take the son of a rabbi. You take this, very famous Jewish son. You kidnap him. You put him in a basement, imprison him in a basement. He has his level of racism. We understand. We explore where the source of his racism comes from certain incidents. We take an African American man who is the uncle of the young kid that is killed by this group of Jewish men. And you lock them both in the basement. They have every reason to want to kill each other, and they try. And then at some point, they realize that the only chance they stand of getting out of this imprisonment is sort of relying on each other. And so that's the premise. And it's not all, blue skies and puppies and Molly, but I try to examine it from a very realistic. We don't have to like each other, but at some point, if our survival depends on it, where does that put us? And so that's where it where it comes from. And again, that part of the book was influenced slightly by the Defiant Ones, Sidney Poitier and Tony Curtis, film, back in the 70s, them being convicts and chained together and hating each other. So, like I said, so I let films influence my writing, and so that's how we arrived there. And the beginning also of this is influenced by Do the Right Thing. It's the hottest day, on record. Temperatures are high, tempers are higher and hotter, and so you start off with that, and that it's very combustible. That at some point something bad is going to happen, and that's the tension, and that always obviously helps with the suspense of the story.
Eriq La Salle, actor, author, director, Eriq La Salle. So you were born in Connecticut, grew up in Connecticut. I imagine Hartford, of all places. You kind of having an insulated life. Tell us about, the imagination that 1 of 4. Where did you fall in the birth order? And what you're the baby. Okay, the baby. So there's something there. What led you to this course as opposed to lawyer, doctor, engineer?
Well, I mean, I think, we all lean towards what we succeed at. We all lean towards our strengths. Very few of us lean towards our weakness in pursuing something. So, I was an okay athlete. It was much more recreational for me. And of course, that's when you grow up in a Black neighborhood, that's sort of expected of you. And I played recreationally. I had a good time, but I never had this overwhelming passion for it. So, my family, if it's raining outside, they're out shooting hoops. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm going in, so that ain't gonna make for a great athlete. And so that was not my passion. My passion was always creativity. And at 8 years old, started writing poetry and short stories. And so really loved that, and thought I would be a writer. And then when I was 14, I auditioned for the high school drama club. But I thought I was going to be able to write a play for them. And I had this, this fantasy, and that was shot down. And they said, no, we need you to audition. And I auditioned for Raisin in the Sun, and was cast. And, that's when the bug bit. And then you ride that for years and years and years. And then as I got into directing and started having to write short films to direct, then that brought back the love of writing. And then all of a sudden I had a desire to try my hand at being a novelist. And so that's, but it's just kind of cool how things, if you think about it, like at 8 years old, I thought, oh, I'll be a writer. And then that goes away, but then it comes back several decades later. Yeah. And I thought that was pretty cool.
I always wonder what Black parents, because as a Black boy in America, at the times you grew up, the opportunities, to do something that seemingly on its face would not make you a lot of money. Because not a lot of people make it, right? In acting, right. Not a lot of people get to become directors. Right. Forget about writing. It's very hard. What did they think about your career? The La Salle?
That's a great question. I grew up a single mother, and what happens is, I think a lot of times in the Black community is love sort of becomes expressed through fear. So it wasn't that my mother wasn't supportive. My mother was afraid, and she was afraid for all the reasons that you listed. I had no real frame of reference. I'm from Hartford, Connecticut. It's not like a ton of famous people came out of Hartford, Connecticut. So we never got to the financial part of it. We just got to the fact that this is something unproven, something unstable. Go with a more, stable position. And Pratt and Whitney is was a manufacturer of aerospace and products, et cetera. And so that was a huge company to work for, and that was kind of expected. It was safe. And so to my mother's credit, once she started seeing the powerful impact and the positive impact that acting had on me, my grades went up. I mean, I went from, as a freshman, I was almost kept back because I was, all of a sudden I discovered girls, and I had my first leather jacket, and, You know, I wasn't thinking about school. And then once I became, involved with acting, um, like a year and a half later, I was on the honor roll. So my mother had enough whatever to realize, oh, whatever this is, it has him focused. It has him working towards purpose. And so, it was, really good childhood. The thing about Hartford is it's very deceptive because it's the insurance capital of the
I was gonna
world
say, yeah,
on one
that's what we
hand,
know.
and it's one of the poorest cities in the nation on the other. And so, I grew
Know
up on the
that.
North End. I grew up in the hood, and you don't know you're poor. And my mother never treated us like we were poor. We always had food to eat. We always had clothes, a car. My mother kept a nice house. So you don't know. And by many standards, I wasn't poor, but by some standards, we were. So, like I said, single mother doing her thing, hustling, doing all kinds of jobs, and so that shapes you, and that work ethic shapes you. So me pursuing all of these things, I credit to that work ethic. And like I said, once she understood the powerful impact that it was making, once she saw that, then she's just like, I don't quite get it. Go ahead, continue to do it. I was always at plays. I was never the kid that was hanging out late. If I was hanging out late, it's because I was doing something nerdy. You know what I mean? So I was like, I was safe, and so that was a big transition. But I do want to say to people of color, and obviously it's gotten better because there are more frames of reference, but you have to be careful to temper one's love so that fear doesn't doesn't dominate. And then the cool thing was when I went to college and I came back my freshman year, my mother and I had a real cool heart to heart, and it was just beautiful because you always think your parents are right. And she admitted, she says, I was hard on you because I wanted to protect you. I wanted this, I wanted that. And then she just looked at me. She goes, I was wrong. And I was, you're like, what?
What?
My mother said she was wrong. And you always think of them as being these superheroes, and they have their views of who you are as their child,
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really, really cool. And then of course she, turned into a fangirl. Because, I started traveling, and I bring her back trinkets from things. She started seeing me on soap opera. She started seeing me on, little guest star roles, and then coming to America, so it was really cool. But that's all the stuff that helped to shape, this moment, let's just say.
And Daryl Jenks in Coming to America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean,
that was the first big one. Yeah, no,
yeah,
here's one for you. I
what?
don't talk about this one much. So one of my first movies, um, I rent a limo. I'm living in New York, so the movie comes out. I rent a limo. I go to Connecticut. I pick up my mother and some family, and go bring them to the movie theater to see an incredible film called Rappin'. But I like being able to do all of these things, and then being able to write and do the book thing. It's a good time. It's a really good time.
Yeah. Also, it gives you options in these times. So you never stop. You never stop. So is this character a nod to Shaft, the great Richard Roundtree? Rest
Yeah,
in power,
wow, man. Yeah, that was sad
man.
to hear
Yeah.
about that. But yeah, kind of like that throwback,
Right on.
70s vibe of a brother, you know what I mean?
Yes. Shut your mouth.
Yeah. So there's a certain type of, call it that 70s alpha. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like it. I like it. I mean, Shaft was complex.
Yeah.
He was complex, and Richard Roundtree played the hell out of him.
Yeah.
Eriq La Salle, this trilogy. Now, can we read them? Do they stand alone? Laws of Annihilation? Do I have
They
to
are
go all the way back?
standalone. There are a couple of things. They are standalones, and it's not a trilogy. It's a series. It's an ongoing series.
Oh,
I've finished the first
okay.
three, but I already working on the fourth one. Plotting out ideas for the fifth one. But yes, the cool thing is it's a series, and like any series, if you read from in chronological order, you get these little cookies, you get these little gifts throughout that Oh, I remember. I know what that reference means. And somebody else reading it will just kind of skim over it. They might not know, but for the people that know, they know that this means that. It's cool to definitely read them in order because there are some huge twists. And so sometimes when you read them out of order, the twists aren't as impactful because you already know what's coming.
Right.
But yes, you can totally. So, Laws of Annihilation is the third. You can totally read it as a standalone, or you can. A lot of people right now are writing in and saying, "Oh, I ordered the first book, I ordered the second book," and they're doing it that way. Some people, I got the third book. So some people, hey, some people that got advanced readers copies of Laws of Annihilation are like, "Oh my God, I got to go back and read the whole series now."
You
So
have to.
it's
Yeah.
really, yeah.
Laws of Depravity is the first, Laws of Wrath, and now Laws of Annihilation. There's a lot of Bible stuff in here. So I was wondering about your walk with the Lord. Is this because I was like, did he have some priest issues in the first one? I was like, did you have an encounter, Eriq La Salle, that you working
No,
through in this? What's going on?
no, that's just, storytelling. I just wanted to really talk about, I just like hypocrisy is something that I find very interesting. And I think I don't consider myself religious. I think religion divides a lot of times more so than brings us together. So I don't consider myself religious. I consider myself spiritual. I believe in God. I even follow the sort of the doctrines of traditional Christianity. But I don't consider myself religious. I've just seen religion. I've seen it abused. I've seen it, people will, be the devil, 6 days a week and then show up on church on Sunday and act holier than thou. People are judgmental and like things that they're doing. They criticize others, the hypocrisy of it. So I don't care what a person's spiritual or religious background. I only care how you treat people. So if you treat me cool, you treat other people cool, you can call. I don't care. I really, that's between you and God. But I think with religion, it's always been like, my religion is better than yours. You're going to go to hell if you don't worship the way I worship. I'm like, oh, really? I don't care if you're Buddhist, Muslim, Jew. I really don't care. I care about how do you treat me? How do you treat people? And so if you, whatever you practice, if that has you trying to be a better version of yourself, we're cool. If whatever you practice does the opposite, I don't care what you call it. I'm not interested. So, oh, I'm a Christian. Well, you're a hypocrite. You know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, they're great Christians, true Buddhists, true Muslims, true, Jewish. I'm not dismissing religion. That's a person's choice. What I'm simply saying is I've seen a lot of hypocrisy in all of these things, but I've also seen beauty and truth in all of them as well. So I can only speak about my journey. So it's the issues there, or the things that I write about. It's just imagination. It's man being held accountable. And then that's a big theme in my books, accountability. And so if you are a hypocrite, if you're a priest who's a pedophile, in the first book, there are ultimately ramifications. And the cool thing is that a lot of times people were rooting for the bad guy in Laws of Depravity.
Mm-hmm.
And they were torn. They were like, I'm rooting for a serial killer because, look at who he's killing. And so people, I know it's wrong, but and that's what you want. You want people to be torn. You want people to sort of get out of their comfort zone. And I think that's what a good book has the power of doing. And that's what this series is designed to do.
Well, you have written a very good book, a very good 3 books, and the audiobook is voiced by you as well. So you're like,
Yes,
no, I'm an actor.
all
I'm
of them.
going to voice my own books.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, are you also using these as a blueprint for maybe a TV series?
Absolutely.
I'm seeing that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the goal is either a movie series or a streaming TV series. So by the time I get finished with the 4th book, and we've already started having conversations, but we want to, obviously make best, obviously the more successful the books are, the more lucrative the deal is, the more power the deal is. So, so we're building this part of that brand right now, but definitely with that goal in mind. And the books are written very cinematically, obviously my influence being from movies and television. So, but written very visual, very, very cinematically, and people when they read them and they read quickly. That's another great, like, I one of the most influential quotes for me is Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison said she wrote her first novel because she wanted to read it. And that's how I feel. Like I write for people, like I write for me and I write for people like me. Like, people say, hey, it's a really good book. Once you get past 100 pages, it really flies. And I'm not going to get past 100 pages. I'm bored.
Right.
So
Let's
I
get
come
to
out
this.
and it's just like, why delay that? So my style of writing is literally the first chapter
From the door,
right out the gate. Something happens and you're like, oh, and then there's short chapters because I feel like I have maybe a short attention span. And I know there are a lot of people like me. And so that's why people really respond to my books, because they'll knock out a bunch of, because they're like, I can't stop reading. Okay, I read, this 5-page chapter. Well, let me get another one in. Let me get another one in. Before they know it, they've done it. But if you write like these 30-page chapters, people are like, oh, so that's kind of the genesis of my style.
Well, you've reached a mark. And the Martyr Maker series, book 3, Laws of Annihilation, is out now. But I really strongly suggest you start with Laws of Depravity, get that, and then Laws of Wrath, get that, and then get to Laws of Annihilation. And by then, the 4th book will be out.
Yes.
And then the TV series. Yes. Eriq La Salle, I am so happy. When I saw you come down the pipe, I was like, yes, I want to talk to him about writing. Everyone wants to talk to him about acting. I want to talk to him about writing. So I'm so grateful that you came through today. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. Appreciate it. And I heard that you wrote. It's always great to talk to people that have a sense of writing, and storytelling, you know what I mean? And so so I was, very excited about this. So thank you, sister. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Novels awaken your empathy. So we want to get more people reading these kind of books. So
absolutely.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Come back.
My days are cooler, nights are warmer, and I put the blame on you. Time moves slow, but my heart beats faster. When these eyes are looking right at you, you give me something to believe in, just what I needed. You're the closest.